Well, in a 2-week period where 6 million people took to the streets to protest Donald Trump, we had the takeover of California's sovereignty by Donald Trump. We had an elected official, a Democratic legislator, killed in her own home and others wounded, and a potential shooting war between the U.S. and Iran off of bombing runs, Operation Midnight Hour by Donald Trump to preemptively take out the Iranian nuclear capacity, all happening in the last 2 weeks. What's on Donald Trump's mind? You know, the 2020 election. What else? Nothing says I am mentally incapacitated like a president who's continuing to believe that he lost the 2020 election and is now threatening to set up and have the taxpayer fund, get this, a special counsel, a special prosecutor, an independent counsel to go after who? What? Joe Biden? People that committed fraud that was outcome determinative, to overcome the millions, the 8 or 9 million electoral advantage of Joe Biden? That's what Donald Trump is now proposing, coming off that week that I just described. And I'm going to cover it right here on Legal AF. Let's get to it. 2020 election. COVID, yes. Lots of mail-in votes, for sure. Lots of people during COVID who didn't want to stand in line with their fellow citizens to vote. I get that. Democrats always have an overwhelming advantage, competitive advantage, because we like to vote by mail and absentee ballots. Follow the rules, follow the law, check the boxes, put the stamps on the envelope, seal the envelope, maybe use double envelopes, properly register. Yes. Whatever the rules say about the timing of the postage and the stamp and the thing and the arrival for the counting, yes. And what is the result of the 2020 election? As we know from, not just my say-so, 60 lawsuits brought by Trump and his proxies around the country, each judge ruling, having looked at the evidence, that if there was any fraud, it was so small, so infinitesimal, that it was not outcome determinative. Let me repeat that. There is always fraud in every election in every country, some worse than others. In the United States, the fraud based on analysis after elections, the post-mortem after the elections, looking at all of these things, pegs fraud at about 0.002%. 0.002%. We're talking about thousands of potential fraudulent ballots. You vote, but not in the right district. You vote twice on purpose or by accident. You vote your mother-in-law's, your dead mother-in-law's ballot, whatever. But it's in the thousands against tens of millions of votes that are overall cast. And so there is fraud, but it is not outcome determinative. It doesn't change. If you gave every one of those fraudulent votes to Trump, it would not change the outcome of the 2020 election. That's what 60 judges, state and federal, said. Ultimately, that's what the United States Supreme Court said. That's what every independent Secretary of State of every state said. And then on top of it, there was an Office of Cybersecurity and Election Integrity established by a guy named Donald Trump. And Chris Krebs, who used to head that department and got fired for making the following statement I'm going to make on his behalf, said that the 2020 election was the most secure election in the history of America. That there was fraud, but it was not outcome determinative. That there was absolutely no proof to any of the conspiracy theories. And Donald Trump had dozens of them, and still does, about whether dead people were voting. No. People were voting more than once. No. The Chinese flipped a switch on the software or the hardware, or Venezuela did, or somebody did, or satellites, or bamboo on ballots changed outcome of elections. No. That election workers all conspire. Think of the conspiracy that would have to take place. Thousands of election workers working together, along with secretaries of state, somehow flip votes from Trump to Biden, or threw away Trump votes in order to deny him the election. You can't coordinate Democrats that well, by the way. And where is the proof of any of that? Or Marjorie Taylor Greene's Jewish satellites were flipping votes, or whatever her theory was. But they continue to go after this issue. Why? Because Donald Trump has figured out it gives him political cover. It allows him to continue to tear down the Biden legacy. That's all they're doing. Every day, every way, there's obviously a talking point in a memo in the Trump administration to tear down the Biden Kamala Harris legacy, to try to leave in a smoldering pile the Democrats' legacy and ability to run for office, national office in the future. That's obvious. They can't make a statement without at the same time, in the same breath, trashing Joe Biden, his mental capacity, the decisions he made, the decisions he didn't make, the fact that there's no way he could have gotten elected. Yeah, there was a way. Donald Trump was not very popular, especially after the first term. And especially after the things that happened there, like a couple of impeachments. And the Democrats are very good at winning national elections, and they had a very good ground game. And yes, Joe Biden stayed in the bunker in the basement for a lot of it. But when the votes were cast and the dust settled, Joe Biden won by 7 million votes and won all the battleground states that he needed to win. And the fact that on the night of the election, because only the machine vote from that day was counted, put Trump ahead in a few of these states. But then when all the mail-in ballots were finally counted and the absentee ballots were finally counted, and some states require them to be counted late or later, that he lost, that's just a reflection of the multiple methods that we can use to vote. Not that there was fraud in the election process. But now Donald Trump is going to waste our time and money to set up a new talking point, a new distraction, to distract from his failing presidency, from his half-baked war plan, which has no war plan in Iran, to distract from all of that. And to give a constant flow of talking points, he's going to try to have Pam Bondi appoint a special prosecutor or special counsel. And watch it. It's going to be some MAGA. It won't be Alina Habba, but it'll be somebody like her. Or it'll be the guy that was going to be the DC U.S. attorney that didn't get the job. Or some other right MAGA wing lawyer. That's going to be in charge. Spending tens of millions of dollars to prove what? That there was fraud in the election that overcame 7 million, 8 million additional votes for Joe Biden, that Donald Trump really won every battleground state, when every court to have looked at it with all the evidence that was provided by Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell and Ken Chesbro and Jenna Ellis and all the rest of his lawyers, none of that proved that there was fraud in the election. In fact, many of those same people I just mentioned were either disbarred, sanctioned, convicted of crimes, or indicted. The fact that Donald Trump was able to delay and win the presidency doesn't mean that these other things didn't happen. But in order for Donald Trump to continue the rewritten narrative, the false narrative that the election in 2020 was stolen from him, and that's why Jan 6th happened. And that's why the people were up in arms, literally, and attacked and tried to attack elected officials in the bloody bloodbath that was Jan 6th attack. In order to continue that thematic, in order to feed the beast of his supporters, to justify these conspiracy theories about China. And recently, Donald Trump said while the flagpole was being erected behind him on the White House grounds, the 80-foot flagpole that you and I are paying for, but Donald Trump called it the gift. He said, well, there's no new evidence, Chinese and license plates and cards that were used. Like what? Like bingo cards out of Chinatown were used people showed up to vote with them? I don't really understand any of this addled brain propaganda coming out of this guy's mouth. But he's still on that kick but I want you to explain it in this hot take. It has to fit neatly in the narrative The guy that doesn't truly believe that he lost needs to argue that he has, get a special counsel and prosecutor to go after it in order to, for the duration of his presidency, including through the midterms, to give him political cover and political power. Now, what's going to happen? Well, he's the puppet master. He controls Pam Bondi. She has no independent free will or thinking. He will order her to look in the Department of Justice manual and declare that she's going to appoint a special counsel like Jack Smith. Now, remember that Jack Smith and the special counsel rule was completely obliterated by Aileen Cannon, a judge in the Southern District of Florida, who ruled at the very end that the special counsel was improperly appointed and funded. Now, that never got completely litigated through the 11th Circuit because Donald Trump won the election. And then eventually the Department of Justice under Donald Trump dismissed that appeal. So it never got to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, every federal court, including the Supreme Court, that's looked at independent counsel said she was wrong. But there is law in the books coming out of Donald Trump's own case that says that this position has to be appointed and confirmed through the Senate. I don't see it that way. The way you read the Constitution and the power of the Attorney General, nobody really sees it that way. But there is that law out there. So let's say he has to get over that hurdle. He has to change positions, adopt an inconsistent position, the one he took in court, and now say that there is the power to do it without Senate confirmation. And then what? They're going to get to the bottom of the 2020 election? But again, given the context of the 2 weeks we've just had, 6 million people taking to the streets, California being taken over, and our federal union being attacked by a sitting president, in addition to dead Democratic elected officials and political assassinations, in addition to a bombing run that cost the American tax people $7 billion and probably was not as successful as Donald Trump says. The fact that this is what is keeping him up at night says a lot. Use this information, use this analysis to prepare yourself, to steel yourself for the midterm elections. Make sure your vote counts. Make sure you register to vote. Make sure you jump through whatever hurdles, mail-in, absentee, early voting, your state, especially if it's red, now imposes on you. I assure you that since you last registered, especially if you're in a red state, they have changed the rules on you, and you may think that you're properly registered, but you're not. Go double check now while there's no pressure, right? We're not yet at the 2026 midterms. Do it now and overcome these voter suppression laws in your state. That is my biggest recommendation that I can make on this particular hot take. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button, and help us continue to grow Legal AF. I'm Michael Popok, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popok Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popok Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popok Firm today at 1-877-POPOK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopokfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, We don't get paid unless you do. The Popok firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.